I notice I'm getting older and older. It's because I'm losing a perspective on life that I relished so much when I was younger. So on Thursday, I went over to Our Lady Wisdom School, and they had Thanksgiving liturgy. And so I made a point of visiting some of the classes afterward. I visited with the kindergarten students. And boy, were they ever excited. Not because it was Thanksgiving, but because it was only 25 days until Halloween. And they were so excited, not only because of the number of days until Halloween, but even what they were going to be dressed up as. And because I remember being like that. Once October 1st came around, it was like, oh, only 30 more days until Halloween. And for these little kids, Thanksgiving is merely a dietary road bump to the feast of Halloween. Now I told the kids, listen, I'm going to give out candy. I used to be the one who went trick-or-treating. Now the roles are reversed, now I'm giving out the treats. But I said, I'll give you treats, I don't want any tricks. I want to make sure that you come to my house wearing your costume. Now unfortunately I've had some people come with a bag asking for candy, but they've got no costume. I said, if you're not going to make the effort to get a costume on, you're not getting any treats from me. And neither do I want any tricks from you. So I want to make sure that they have the effort to get a treat by putting on their costume. Likewise for us, the greatest treat we can get is to put on Christ. So in our gospel today, which is really the third parable since Jesus has entered triumphantly into Jerusalem. So now we're entering to chapter 22 of Matthew's gospel. Matthew 21 began with Jesus not only entering into Jerusalem, but cleansing the temple. And so obviously with that, he's got some enemies, the leaders of the Jewish faith, the Pharisees and the scribes. And now they're questioning him. They want to put him in prison, but they don't because of the fear of the popularity that he has. And so they continue to ask him questions, but he always uses that as an opportunity to teach. And so today's the third of the parables of the last 3 weeks that we've heard about how Jesus responds to their questioning. So today is the parable of the wedding feast. Now there are a couple of interesting points about this parable. One is that we don't know who the bride is. We know the king has a party for his son. We don't know who the bride is. Who is she? Well, the bride of the Old Testament is always Israel. It's the prophets who always speak about the covenant that God has with Israel as a marriage contract, as this intimate relationship. And so it's the prophets, particularly Jeremiah and Ezekiel, who continually call Israel back to heed the marriage covenant with God. And they always seem to go away. The prophets call them back. They go away and come back. And sometimes Israel doesn't like what the prophets have to say, maltreat them and kill them. And so today's gospel is really a reminder of that covenant that God has with Israel. And so this parable is not only addressed to a general story, but specifically to the Jewish people. So twice in today's gospel that the king invites the guests to come to the wedding banquet, but twice they refuse. So some of them are too busy, but they will maltreat the slaves who are also the prophets, maltreat them and end up killing them. And so the king says, well, everything is ready. The people invited don't want to come, so I will go and send my slaves to invite everyone, the good and the bad, to the wedding banquet. Again, because everything is ready. And the feast is so beautifully illustrated in today's passage from Isaiah, of the beauty of this feast. But now we need people to eat it. That's what God wants. And so as the slaves or the prophets go out to seek everybody, another interesting point, or the harshest point of the whole gospel, is this individual who's been invited comes, does not have the wedding garment, and because he doesn't, he's cast out into the outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen. That's pretty stark. I mean, if we were invited to a celebration, the presumption is would come as we are. And if someone's coming up in the street, how does one have a wedding garment? Well, of course, it's much more broader perspective than that. Because not only does this parable look to the past, but also foreshadows the future. For it says that the invited guests refused, And the king became enraged and destroyed the city and sent troops to do so. Well, that foreshadows what happens in AD 70, when the pinnacle of the center of the Jewish faith, Jerusalem, will be destroyed because of its lack of faith. And also it foreshadows of how one entered into the wedding banquet. So maybe the question becomes, well, what is this wedding garment and how does one receive it? Well, just as any one of us is invited to a wedding banquet ourselves, or to a graduation ceremony, or to a very formal dinner, one is not going to go in a tank top, shorts, and flip-flops to such a grand occasion. I mean, one thing, one dresses up because it's a sign of courtesy and ultimately respect for the host. That if we really want to make a good impression and be grateful for the invitation, we are going to dress up well, according to the requirement, as a sign of respect. So whether this individual lacked the physical garment, or maybe the way he conducted himself, that he was essentially thrown out as a reminder, okay, if we're invited somewhere, we want to be sure we are properly attired for such an occasion. And when we come to church, we're supposed to put our Sunday best, or at least to raise the bar in terms of our attire. But even more profoundly, whenever we come to church, we're supposed to put on a wedding garment ourselves. So how do we get this wedding garment? In, I believe it's Galatians chapter 3, when St. Paul speaks to the community in Galatia and telling them, in baptism you put on Christ. So the word put on is also where we have like endowment. So we know the word endowment. Let's say universities receive an endowment. Well, physically, it's to put something over the university so that people can continue to go. So they're clothed with finances to allow students to go and the university to operate. And likewise, it's almost like baptism, you're clothed with Christ, endowed with that. So much so that there's no more distinction among the members of the community. That in Galatia, there's no rich, no poor, no slave, no free, no woman, no man. We are all clothed with Christ. We are truly one body. And St. Paul alludes to how we are transformed in this endowment, the wedding garment we receive in baptism. He says that in Colossians chapter 3, that if we've put on Christ, we're supposed to conduct ourselves accordingly. That we're supposed to be just people, that we're supposed to be happy people, that we're supposed to be merciful and all that. So our lives are visibly changed as a result of this transformation each one has received in baptism. And so our hearts change as a result. And so much so that it's really the baptism, the first of the sacraments, that leads to the greatest of the sacraments, the Eucharist. And the Church's teaching is really based upon the book of Revelation, the very mysterious and the remarkable images that come out of Revelation. But ultimately, it is a celebration of those who've been tried through persecution and eventually come, because of their faith and perseverance, to the wedding banquet of the Lamb. And so every time we celebrate the Eucharist, it is heaven on earth. We are joined to heaven, to the wedding banquet of heaven, where there is the Lamb is there, and all those who wear the outer garment that has been washed in the blood of the Lamb come and eat with him. So the wedding garment is how we are transformed in Christ, become one with him, and joined to celebrate in that remarkable dignity. So when the grace tree we can receive is being put on with Christ. Now it's very nice that all of us are able to celebrate in the confines of the four walls of this beautiful gym. And it's nice to be together with those we're familiar with and we're content with. But I think also going back to our call in baptism, we are baptized as priests, kings, queens, and also prophets. And I think we have to make present what happened 2,000 years ago in our gospel today. That it is the king who sends out his slaves to call everyone to the wedding feast of the Lamb. And you know who that is supposed to be? You and I. And Pope Francis really taken this upon himself in terms of the challenge that he wants of the church nowadays. He calls the church to go to the peripheries of society, to go where the church is not present, where Christ is not present. As St. Paul says in his letter to the Philippians, is to relieve the distress of others. And it's difficult to proclaim, to evangelize, to share our faith with others. I think we can take consolation in a saying of St. Francis, preach the gospel always and if necessary, use words. So in the sense that we've been so transformed with Christ that others shall almost encounter Christ in us by the way we conduct ourselves. And so people may say, hey, why are you so different? There's something about you that makes you better. Well, and then as St. Peter, I believe, says, you have to give a testament to the questions that people bring to us about our faith. Okay, we'll do it. And so by virtue of the wedding garment that we receive in baptism, we are then to share that with others, to be the prop, to bring others to the wedding feast of the Lamb. And of course, we can never give what we don't have. And so the Lord nourishes us with His word to encourage us as a reminder of our dignity and also the responsibility that comes with that, and also to give us the food to do so. And by that, we receive this remarkable treat of being clothed with Christ. And so for those awaiting Halloween, we have to put on the costume in order to get lots of treats. So anybody who comes to my place who does not have a costume or the Halloween garment is not going to get any treats from me. But if you have a nice costume, hey, you'll get a lot of treats. And so this week, let's remind ourselves that we have been given a remarkable gift, the wedding garment, given to us in baptism, in which we come to celebrate the Eucharist, the wedding feast of the Lamb, and then to go as prophets to bring others to this wedding feast. And by doing so, we will encounter the goodness of God, and also to share this treat with others, that they may in turn give thanks to God for who He is and what He does for the whole world.